I'm back. I'm back a little early, as you can see. Guess what? Woo! Listen, I don't even know why I'm so excited, because I already knew. It's just the fact that it's important. You know, it's important that we see the law do what it needs to do for Romeca. We need the law to do what it needs to do for Romeca. That's what we needed. We needed some good prosecutors to stand behind this case. We have had the best of the best lawyers, attorneys, and we have had the best judges with strong history of leadership. This is not a joke. An innocent woman, unarmed, in broad daylight, in the school zone, unalived. And the defense is basically grasping for straws, trying to get freedom for a short period of time. And guess what? The appellate judges said no. They said no. Can't do it, Sweets. Sweets, you should have thought about that. You should have thought about that, Sweets. Because now I got to change my whole evening show to share with you the specifics, even though we already knew this was going to happen like this. We already knew this was going to happen like this. We already knew that they was going to say no. We already knew that we didn't feel that it was self-defense. We already knew that folks took it too far. And guess what? Those 3 judges who looked at the same information had the same exact
For months, the tragic killing of Romeca Meeks Blackman has remained one of the most closely followed true crime cases in Chicago. Every court hearing, every legal filing, and every decision has been watched closely by thousands of people searching for answers. Now, the case has taken another significant turn after a reported appellate setback for Holly Johnson, a development that has once again placed the investigation in the national spotlight. For Romeca's family, however, this story has never been about headlines or social media discussions. It has always been about a young mother whose life ended in a heartbreaking act of violence. No court ruling can erase the pain of losing a daughter, a mother, and a loved one whose future was taken away in an instant. The reported appeal decision has become one of the biggest legal developments since the case began. While supporters on both sides reacted with strong emotions online, the ruling means the criminal proceedings continue to move forward through the courts. It is another reminder that the legal process can be long, emotional, and filled with difficult moments for everyone involved. As news of the decision spread, people immediately began asking what it meant for the future of the case. Would this change the timeline? Would new evidence emerge? Would the prosecution gain momentum? Or would the defense continue fighting through other legal options? Those questions quickly dominated conversations across social media and true crime communities. In this documentary, we'll carefully examine the events that brought the case to this point. We'll revisit the heartbreaking story of Romeca Meeks Blackman, explain the legal significance of the reported appeal decision, and follow every major courtroom development while separating verified court proceedings from public speculation. Long before courtroom hearings and legal appeals became part of this story, Romeca Meeks Blackman was simply a devoted mother whose world revolved around her young son. Friends and loved ones remembered her as someone who worked hard, cared deeply for her family, and wanted nothing more than to see her child grow into a happy and successful young man. September 8, 2025, began like any other school morning. Romeca helped her son get ready for his day, making sure he had everything he needed before they left home. Before dropping him off at school, she slipped a handwritten note into his lunchbox. It was a simple message from a loving mother, wishing her little boy a wonderful first-grade day. She had no way of knowing that those words would become one of the last expressions of love her son would ever receive from her. After the school drop-off, Romeca drove away, expecting to continue with her normal routine. But only minutes later, that ordinary morning turned into a nightmare. Gunfire erupted, leaving witnesses stunned and emergency responders rushing to the scene. Police officers quickly secured the area, while paramedics fought desperately to save Romeca's life. Despite their efforts, she succumbed to her injuries, sending shockwaves through her family and the entire community. News of the tragedy spread rapidly throughout Chicago. Family members struggled to process the devastating phone calls they received that morning. Friends found it difficult to believe that someone they had spoken to just hours earlier was suddenly gone forever. For many people following this case, the handwritten note in Romeca's son's lunchbox became the most heartbreaking symbol of all. It was a reminder that behind every criminal investigation is a family whose lives have been permanently changed. As investigators began examining the evidence, they believed they were uncovering a story far more complicated than anyone had first imagined. Within hours of the shooting, investigators were working around the clock to answer one critical question: who wanted Romeca Meeks Blackman dead, and why? The crime scene became the starting point. Detectives carefully collected shell casings, photographed every piece of evidence, and interviewed witnesses who had either seen the shooting or noticed suspicious activity moments before it happened. Surveillance cameras from nearby businesses and traffic intersections were also reviewed in hopes of reconstructing Romeca's final moments. As investigators pieced together the timeline, they began focusing on the relationships surrounding the case. According to prosecutors, the evidence suggested that the shooting was not a random act of violence, but stemmed from an ongoing personal conflict. Detectives reportedly examined phone records, surveillance footage, and witness statements as they worked to identify everyone connected to the investigation. As the evidence mounted, authorities eventually arrested Khadijah Holly Johnson and charged her in connection with Romeca's death. Prosecutors alleged that the investigation had uncovered sufficient evidence to support the charges. Holly Johnson has denied wrongdoing through the legal process, and her defense has challenged the prosecution's version of events. The arrest brought a mixture of relief and sorrow to Romeca's loved ones. While many believed it was an important step toward justice, they also understood that an arrest could never bring Romeca back. Her son would still grow up without his mother, and her family would continue carrying the pain of an unimaginable loss. As news of the arrest spread across the country, the case attracted even more public attention. People wanted answers, and they wanted to know what evidence investigators believed connected the suspect to the crime. Those questions would soon begin to unfold inside the courtroom, where both the prosecution and the defense prepared for a legal battle that would captivate thousands. If you're following this investigation, like this video, subscribe to Crime Scene Chronicles, and turn on notifications so you never miss another true crime documentary. When the case finally entered the courtroom, emotions were running high. Romeca Meeks Blackman's family sat quietly, hoping each hearing would bring them one step closer to understanding why their loved one was taken from them. Across the courtroom sat the defendant, Khadijah Holly Johnson, as attorneys prepared to argue their positions before the judge. Prosecutors began outlining what they believed happened in the moments leading up to the fatal shooting. They described the investigation as one that involved surveillance footage, witness interviews, forensic evidence, and other materials they said supported the charges against Holly Johnson. According to prosecutors, the evidence painted a clear picture of how the events unfolded. The defense, however, strongly disagreed. Defense attorneys argued that the prosecution's version of events did not tell the complete story. They challenged portions of the evidence and maintained that the court should carefully examine every fact before reaching any conclusions. They made it clear that they intended to fight the charges throughout the legal process. As both sides presented their arguments, the courtroom remained silent. Every statement carried enormous weight, because each decision would affect the future of everyone involved. For Romeca's family, every hearing forced them to relive one of the darkest days of their lives. Outside the courthouse, Reporters gathered to provide updates as soon as the hearing ended. Social media quickly filled with reactions, opinions, and speculation. Some people believed the prosecution had presented a compelling case, while others insisted that the defense still had important arguments to make. But regardless of public opinion, the final outcome would depend on the evidence presented in court, not on debates online. As the hearing came to an end, another major legal battle was already taking shape. New motions would soon be filed, and both sides prepared for the next phase of a case that continued to capture national attention. While headlines focused on appeals, court filings, and legal arguments, Romeca Meeks Blackmon's family continued living through a nightmare that no courtroom decision could ever erase. Every new hearing reopened old wounds, reminding them that the woman they loved was never coming home. For Romeca's young son, life would never be the same. The simple routines they once shared, school mornings, bedtime conversations, and family moments, had become memories. The handwritten note she left in his lunchbox on that final morning remained a heartbreaking reminder of a mother's love that was cut tragically short. As the case continued through the courts, family members remained determined to see the legal process through. They attended hearings, listened as attorneys argued over evidence and procedure, and waited patiently for each ruling. Although the legal system often moves slowly, they believed every step mattered in the search for justice. Outside the courtroom, community members also continued to show their support. Friends organized memorial gatherings, shared memories of Romeca, and reminded people that she was much more than the victim of a high-profile case. She was known for her kindness, her dedication to her son, and her dream of giving him the best life possible. Meanwhile, the reported appeal decision became another major topic of discussion. Legal experts explained that while the ruling represented an important procedural milestone, it did not end the criminal case. Instead, it cleared the way for the proceedings to continue toward the next stage. As public attention remained fixed on the latest legal developments, Romeca's family kept their focus on something far more important. They wanted the world to remember who Romeca was, not simply how she died, but how she lived, loved, and cared for the people closest to her. The case was entering another critical phase, and everyone knew that the most important courtroom battles were still ahead. If you're following every major update in this heartbreaking case, like this video, subscribe to Crime Scene Chronicles, and turn on notifications so you never miss another true crime documentary. With the reported appeal now behind them, the focus of the Romeca Meeks Blackman case shifted once again. The legal battle was far from over, but one thing had become clear. The courtroom would remain the place where the future of this case would ultimately be decided. For prosecutors, the latest legal development meant they could continue preparing for the next phase of the proceedings. Every piece of evidence, every witness statement, and every forensic detail would become increasingly important as they worked to present their case before the court. The defense, however, was not expected to give up. Even after a setback, defense attorneys often continue exploring every legal option available to their client. Motions, hearings, and additional arguments are all part of a criminal case, especially one that has attracted so much public attention. The legal process is designed to allow both sides the opportunity to fully present their positions before a final decision is reached. While attorneys continued their work, Romeca's family faced another difficult reality. Every new court date forced them to relive the painful memories of September 8, 2025. Every hearing reminded them of the life that had been stolen, and the little boy who would forever grow up without his mother's love and guidance. Outside the courthouse, the public continued following every update. Some people believed justice was getting closer, while others waited patiently for the complete presentation of evidence before reaching their own conclusions. Regardless of public opinion, everyone understood that only the court could determine the legal outcome. As the case moved toward its next chapter, one question remained in everyone's mind. What would happen when all of the evidence was finally presented? That answer would take time, but for Romeca's loved ones, the hope for justice remained as strong as ever. As another court date came and went, one thing became painfully clear: justice is rarely quick. While the public often sees only the headlines, the families involved experience every delay, every hearing, and every legal argument as another emotional chapter in a journey they never asked to take. For Romeca Meeks Blackman's loved ones, The reported appeal decision was another reminder that the legal process was continuing to move forward. It did not erase the grief they carried every single day, but it represented another step in a case they hoped would eventually bring accountability through the courts. Romeca's young son remained at the center of many people's thoughts. Every milestone in his life would now be marked by the absence of the mother who had loved him unconditionally. The handwritten note she left in his lunchbox on that final morning continues to symbolize the bond they shared, a simple act of love that became a heartbreaking final memory. As prosecutors prepared for the next phase of the case, they continued organizing the evidence they believed supported their allegations. At the same time, the defense continued exercising its legal rights by challenging the prosecution's case and preparing its own arguments. That is how the justice system works. Each side is given the opportunity to present its case before a final decision is reached. Outside the courtroom, the conversation never really stopped. Every legal update generated thousands of reactions across social media, with people expressing hope, frustration, sadness, and countless opinions. But beyond the online debates, one fact remained unchanged. A family was still mourning the loss of someone they loved deeply. The legal process may take time, but Romeca's story has already left a lasting impact. It serves as a reminder that behind every courtroom proceeding is a real family searching for answers, healing, and justice. When the cameras eventually stop recording and the reporters move on to the next headline, Romeca Meeks Blackman's family will still be living with a loss that can never truly be repaired. Court hearings may come and go, appeals may be filed and decided, and legal arguments may continue. But none of those things can bring back the woman whose life ended far too soon. For many people, Romeca's story will always be remembered because of one simple act of love. On the morning she dropped her son off at school, she placed a handwritten note inside his lunchbox, encouraging him to have a wonderful first-grade day. She believed she would see him again that afternoon. Instead, that note became her final message to the little boy she loved more than anything. As the legal case continues, the courts will ultimately determine the outcome based on the evidence presented by both the prosecution and the defense. That process is an essential part of the justice system, ensuring that decisions are made in the courtroom rather than through rumors or social media speculation. But beyond the legal proceedings lies a much deeper story. It is the story of a mother whose future was taken away, a child forced to grow up without her, and a family forever changed by a single tragic morning. Those are the lives that deserve to be remembered long after the headlines disappear. If there is one lesson to take from Romeca's story, it is that every victim is more than a case number or a news headline. Behind every investigation is a family searching for answers, healing, and peace. No matter how long the legal process lasts, Romeca Meeks Blackman's memory deserves to be honored with dignity, compassion, and truth. Thank you for joining us for this investigation. If you appreciate respectful, well-researched true crime documentaries that put victims first and follow every major courtroom development, please like this video, subscribe to Crime Scene Chronicles, and turn on notifications. Your support helps us continue bringing thoughtful, fact-based true crime stories to the channel. Until our next investigation, stay safe, stay informed, and never forget that every crime scene tells a story, but every victim leaves behind a legacy.